Hi, I'm Robert Osborne, and welcome. Nice to have you with us as we continue our festival of movies about race in Hollywood. It's our look at how Latinos have been portrayed in Hollywood movies over the years, and with me once again to help put our festival in context is Chon Noriega, professor at UCLA and the author of this book, Shot in America, Television, the State, and the Rise of Chicano Cinema. Welcome back, Chon.
Thank you, Robert.
Now, Chon is not only here to help me introduce these films, he also helped program this festival. And for the next several hours, we're going to be looking at films which focus on relationships between Latinos and Caucasians. Well, up next we have the first in a whole series of movies made in Hollywood in the 1940s about a Latina Spitfire known as Mexican Spitfire. Let's talk a little about Mexican Spitfire. I loved these movies when I was a kid.
Yeah, they star Lupe Velez, and the one we're going to see tonight is the first in a series of 7 films in which she plays the wife of an American businessman. And the series of films is interesting because they almost anticipate I Love Lucy a decade later,
right.
Featuring a very broadly depicted ethnic character married to a white assimilated American. And the series explores the comic potentials in this. And I think what's really interesting about the film is it's continually asking the question, is she going to be able to assimilate?
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's fascinating about the films is they always answer no. She's not.
Everybody thinks she won't.
Yeah, it's a foregone conclusion. She's not going to be able to assimilate, but she's not going to leave, and no one's going to be able to push her out of the marriage, let alone out of the country.
Now, I grew up in a very small town in the state of Washington. There were no Latinos living around there, so kind of the images that a lot of people that I knew, myself included as a kid, got about Latinos and Latino ladies was from movies like Mexican Spitfire. Did that do a lot of damage to Latinos, do you think, in being assimilated in America?
I think we can probably look at it 2 ways. On the one hand, yes, it's fairly stereotypical if there are no other images giving you different points of view. On the other hand, this is one of the first where you have presented the idea that she is somebody living in the United States. She is a citizen through the marriage. And she's a part of the American culture at this point.
Yeah.
And that's quite a breakthrough because in her earlier roles, Lupe Velez was always playing ethnic or racial types, but they were always set in exotic and foreign locations.
Right.
And once she, and they were dramatic, once she becomes a comedic figure, she's always in the United States,
right.
But from Mexico or some other Latin.
And she's very likable. I mean, you love Mexican Spitfire. She's a lot of fun, and she's a good-hearted gal. Talk a little about Lupe Velez, because she was like, there were very few Latino stars in Hollywood. Dolores Del Rio, of course, and
along with Dolores Del Rio and Ramon Navarro, she's one of the very few Mexican actors who come into Hollywood in the silent era and then make the transition to the sound era.
Right.
And she's got a fascinating history. When she first came to the United States in the mid-20s, she was cast by Hal Roach in a Laurel and Hardy film, and would then go and star opposite Douglas Fairbanks in The Gaucho, and even was one of the main characters in D.W. Griffith's first sound film.
So she had a nice career. Well, let's have a look. Here's the film from 1940 starring Leon Errol and Lupe Velez, Mexican Spitfire. Cute movie. This movie, you know, starred a whole series of other Mexican Spitfire films, all starring the very likable Lupe Velez. And here with me to talk some more about this movie is author and UCLA professor Chon Noriega. Now, there were about 7, weren't there, in the series?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember they were all kind of the same kind of crazy plot and mix-ups and all of that, very short and everything. Now, this was the first actual Mexican Spitfire film, but wasn't that character actually introduced in another film earlier?
Yeah, the Spitfire character was introduced in 1939, a year before this film, in The Girl from Mexico.
Girl from Mexico.
And she's her name is Carmelita Fuentes, and she lives in Mexico.
Uh-huh.
And the Dennis Lindsay character actually is traveling down there looking for talent and comes across her and falls in love and brings her back to the United States. But in the series, she's actually already living in the United States. So in this one,
she's already here.
Yeah, yeah. Marriage is not her motivation for being in the United States.
So they actually obviously saw an idea for a series.
Yeah.
And then out of that came Mexican Spitfire.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Good movie. Good choice.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, let's move on. Up next, Chon and I are going to be back to bring you another film in our look at Latino images in film. This one's a 1952 drama directed by William Wellman and starring Shelley Winters and Ricardo Montalban.